because I see a lot, and I'm not going to name any names, but I see a lot of people on social media still putting out there, hey, this is what we're doing. We're crushing it, blah, blah, blah. No one's crushing it. Okay. That is what I want everyone to understand, is that this is a market where 99.9% of real estate investors are not crushing it. Welcome to the Our Family Invest podcast, where we explore what happens when family, purpose, and entrepreneurship align. I'm Mike, a former Maui firefighter who reached financial freedom in just 5 years through real estate investing.
And I'm Caroline, a Maui-based realtor, here to educate, empower, and elevate my clients to make smart real estate moves, whether right here at home or through my nationwide network.
Together, we're chasing our full potential as individuals, as a couple, and as a family. We're here to build a life that matters. And each week we share the stories of couples who inspire us to love harder, dream bigger, and grow bolder. So join us and let's learn, share, and grow together. Okay, so here we are.
Hi.
It is mid-2025. And we want to keep this episode as like a real estate of the union, right? Because we get so many people that we've been talking to about like what's happening in real estate in their markets and what should we do about it kind of thing. We get a lot of questions on that. So I want to go over that really quickly, what you think is happening. And certainly you can speak to a local level and I can speak
And now Vancouver.
And now Canada, but let's not touch on Canada. And we can speak more on a national level as well.
Okay. So generally we have a ton of inventory on condos, whether it's apartment zoned, hotel zoned, because on the island of Maui, because we do have the Minatoya bill continuing to reappear and be deliberated on phasing out thousands of short-term rentals. So we'll leave it at that, but it's definitely more geared to a buyer's market. We're seeing prices that we have never seen before in the cyclical markets. They should not be dropping the way they are, but they are for condos. And then as far as residential, our residential is still moving. I think our median house price right now is still 1.3, which is crazy. So anything under $1 million or 1.1 is still moving pretty quickly, which is I guess kind of good to see, as far as home ownership can continue to be attainable in some shape or form, rather than getting into a condo and having those HOA fees skyrocket with insurance. So as far as that, at the end of the day, whatever the market, whatever the cycle, price sells real estate. So there will always be a buyer or seller for the right price. And if it's not moving, then it's not priced right, or there are other factors, but a lot of times it comes down to price and the risk, right? And things are sitting for, hundreds of days.
I think, we're talking about the Maui market now. And the Maui market is a little bit different than most other markets. Well, it certainly is a high desire market. So when you're talking about home prices selling in the, 1.2, 1.1, 1.3, somewhere in those ranges, that is not uncommon in a very desirable market.
Sure.
Right. So for that, I think that we're on track. It's not as unattainable as a lot of people think. However, we don't really have anything below $1 million. And that's the difference, right? Even our condos, like HOA fees have gone up dramatically, where they really make no sense if they're not going to be short-term
And
rented.
the way that we're seeing residential sales make sense are the multi-generation, the families hooing together. So they're working together to make those mortgage payments to make that property make sense.
Sure.
But yeah, it's definitely tough because there is a divide on how much money you can make on the actual physical jobs here if you are not working for a company that can provide a steady salary off island.
Right. And that's always been the really hard thing about Maui, is that we can't drive to a better job, right? We are limited.
Yeah.
There's a a very low ceiling of high paying jobs.
That's actually interesting because, I mean, we were just in Coeur d'Alene and a lot of the employees drive from Spokane.
Correct.
And so that tells you right there for cost, for taxes, but it still makes sense for them to work in a different state. Absolutely. Where it's 30 minutes away.
It's 30 minutes.
But
we don't have that option.
We don't.
We can't drive to Phoenix, right? Like that's the challenge with Maui, I think, in general. And I think that's how that's going to continue.
Yeah.
I don't see a way other than some kind of subsidies where that really changes much.
Yeah. And I think what we're going to have is, not getting political, but the phase outs just logistically, if there are phase outs of the short-term rentals and the sellers need to sell because maybe they have a really high mortgage that they bought with the intention to have income to offset the mortgage, is that the families that are here that are working together to buy that $1 million home that is a fixer-upper that maybe has 2 separate dwellings, maybe not, right. That they're not going to all pile 5 or 6 people into the condo and be able to afford that payment.
No.
So it's going to be interesting to see because it's not just more housing.
Right.
It may sit vacant, and that
I know you don't want to talk
be a problem.
About the politics of this, and we haven't discussed this about what we wanted to talk about on this podcast.
Sure.
And I get your position as a realtor here on Maui,
right.
where there are things that you can say and things that you cannot say or don't want to say, right?
Yeah.
That's fair. I am not a realtor. I'm also not a politician. However, I can look at economics and I can see that pulling short-term rentals, I understand the high level of why someone might want to do that. But the logistics economically is suicide for this island. My take, and you can shoot me your feedback if you want, but I mean,
yeah, I think a lot of
has
people
to come from somewhere
for sure.
And if we're getting our tax dollars from tourism and you cut off tourism, where are the tax dollars coming from?
Yeah. And if it's coming from homeowners who are here and our taxes continue to skyrise and our cost of living continues to go up, that's going to make it really painful for a lot of people.
Correct.
So we'll see what happens. And I think too, just like talking real estate as a whole, because majority of the people aren't on Maui and as far as listeners. So real estate, like across the board, it looks like that the prices are continuing to soften, that it is still a buyer's market or making more so of a buyer's market. And at the end of the day, in different markets, price still sells real estate. You can still find deals. You can still make things work, but you have to be a lot more creative and you have to put the work in to find it or have the relationships built to, as far as the investing standpoint.
Well, I think there's always a place where it makes sense to be a buyer. I think there's always a place where it makes sense to be a seller. And so what I struggle with is talking again on Maui. What makes sense? Where does it make sense to be a buyer in the condo market on Maui? Because I do see a path for that. It's just a very niche percentage of people that would.
Do you mean as a full-time occupant?
No, I just mean who would buy in today's condo market? Who does it make sense for?
Yeah, I think people that can sit on it for 10 or 20 years and not worry about the fluctuating costs. And unfortunately, the people that are going to be able to afford these units are not going to be people from here when things get phased out. And so it can backfire. It can backfire big time with taking over the island with people not from here. And I think that's kind of the opposite vibe of what is wanting to be the outcome. But I can see like no one else can weather those storms. Not no one else, but a lot of people cannot weather those storms for 10, 20 years and just sit on real estate.
See, I have a little bit more optimistic horizon than that, because I don't think it's going to be 10, 20 years before things turn around for the condo market. I do see like who it makes most sense for is people with deep pockets for sure. And people who do see, like, there's always going to be value of Maui, right?
Sure.
It's still the most beautiful place on the planet.
And there's
Has the
only
best
so much of it.
beaches. There's only so much of it, right? So for those reasons, it's always going to have desire. The sad thing is, like we talked about before, we don't have an economy that supports enough income for the local people to be able to purchase those condos at today's prices. So what does that mean? How is there a way? I don't know if you know this, but is there a way that the county can step in and somehow subsidize down payments or something for the local people to stay here? Because even like a short-term rentable condo, you're still seeing $600, $700, $800 a month in HOA fees. And that's something, and the insurance has doubled in the last year.
Yeah,
right?
or
So those
been
things
canceled.
are like, or been canceled. So those kind of problems exist, and they're big ones to try and solve for. And I don't know, I know you don't want to push people off the island if you're the local government, right? But the way that we're going about trying to keep people here isn't working either.
Well, it's just not, the dots aren't connecting, is that they don't have the money to be able to buy these, even if it's available. So and then put on top of that is the property taxes and the HOA and the insurance. Those are costs that you can't get away from. And so I don't know what government initiatives can be put into place, because they still have to get the money from somewhere else.
Correct.
There's only so much we can go in debt and defer.
Right.
And there takes capital to keep the island running with services.
Right. And
so,
the short-term rental condos, when they are currently, they are still, all condos are still short-term rentable if they are zoned hotel, or certain HOAs allow for it, even if they're apartment zoned, right? So I would assume that hotel zone condos remain hotel zone, and those ones are going to be fine. Now, we have seen a huge downturn in tourism since the Maui fires. But I feel like that will turn around at some point. So hotel zone condos, I still think are, they're still sitting at the same place that the apartment zone condos are sitting. So I think the value in those is a little bit higher. And I think that you are going to be better off, especially if you can look down the road. And I don't think 10, 20 years, but I do think it's probably going to be 3 to 5 years at least before you can see those things breaking even, if you are trying to buy it with your minimum down payment.
Right. And that comes into play. If you're paying for cash and you don't have to worry about that monthly, not that you didn't have to worry about the capital, that's something that you have control over, at least the mortgage standpoint. But the flip side of that, we can see how long deliberations take, and county council has terms.
Yep.
So when those terms get renewed, things start over, not from square one, but they do start over, which means that clock starts over and the deliberations start over. So can they get everything done in 2 years? Probably not. And so that's where I'm not saying 10 to 20 years everything is going to be back up to where it was or have the value that it did before. But I do feel like it is a very long-term play, because there's going to be problems that arise from whatever options get chosen.
Yeah.
And then just, backtracking from real estate in general. I mean, people that we know, everyone seems to be struggling in some standpoint with real estate, but also people are still making money in real estate. So I think despite the market shifts, there are still pivots. Like a lot of people, look at Thatch, and his pivot is all ADUs.
Sure.
And maximizing property. Sure. And then we just read about California getting rid of environmental red tape. I don't know all the specifics of that, but that changes developing
the game
very quickly.
For sure. I think, if we're going to take this to like a nationwide level now, I think that the market is a little bit brighter than it is here on Maui, as far as investing goes.
And we're just an expensive market.
We are. Right. But there are other expensive markets too. And I see, I really look at today's market, and we're mid 2025 right now, but I see it very similarly to how the market was in like 2010, right? So we had bottomed out after the crash of 2008. And now we're kind of in that unknown. In my opinion, we're probably still at the bottom of the market, but I can see where prices are starting to get a little bit better for sellers, and starting to see more action being taken. And I don't follow every market. I follow a number of them for sure. And we are very good friends with a ton of investors, right? So
we're in a lot of different markets.
Yeah. In a lot of different markets. So,
hey family, real quick, if you'd rather watch your content, head over to Our Family Invests on YouTube. You'll find this episode and all our episodes over there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your takeaways in the comments. Now, back to the show.
I think we should talk about the common threads that we see from our friends who are investors in other markets as well, because I think this one is interesting, and this has been going on for the last couple of years, is the shiny object syndrome, right? This is something that where it doesn't matter if you are in short-term rentals or long-term rentals or midterm rentals or multifamily, whatever it is, everyone's looking for what's the next, what's the one that makes sense right now.
Except for those who are now, they were maybe on the shiny object syndrome or diversification, which is great. We know that, but into a different arm of real estate that they weren't necessarily well versed, or they didn't get their foundation in real estate. They're going back to that, like 3-2 brick B class. They're getting back to their recipe, and it may be boring, but they know it so well that they're able to still spot the asset that makes sense,
right? Because
it's nothing new.
Right.
And I think that's where people are. They're still moving the needle, still able to be profitable and to provide for the teams and families, because we have a lot of friends that provide for 50 to 75 families because they employ them.
Correct.
And so they take that weight of responsibility for not just like, I need to make X amount of dollars on this property. And most of that is in the flipping stages right now because the cash flow isn't making sense, but that they have mouths to feed.
Yeah. And I think that, to be fair, most of the people that we know that are involved in real estate bought their first property after 2012, right? And so it's been such a great run up until, just a couple of years ago, where you could not lose. No matter what asset class you got into, you were doing really well, right? What I see now with those big wide eyes of everyone looking around at what's working. And I do want to call this part out, because I see a lot, and I'm not going to name any names, but I see a lot of people on social media still putting out there, hey, this is what we're doing. We're crushing it, blah, blah, blah. No one's crushing it. Okay. That is what I want everyone to understand, is that this is a market where 99.9% of real estate investors are not crushing it.
Yeah. And they may have the equity and the holdings to weather the storms, and not that they're not making profits, but it is not
not the way that it was, or that it may appear on.
Right.
So everybody that I know has really tightened up. I think the asset classes that still make sense, in my opinion, are, I love long-term single family home rentals, right? And if you have to put more of a down payment down, I'm okay with that, as long as I'm buying in a location that's good, in an asset that I like, right? I think flipping makes sense still, for guys who really know their market and know their numbers.
But I think also, I understand, and I agree with you for us, but for people who are starting out, they don't have 50% or 100% down. They have to figure out how to be a little bit scrappy and creative. And so that's where different tactics like
house hacking,
ADUs, arbitrage, there's different avenues that they can still take to get that capital to maybe buy in a B class neighborhood to get that rental. But in this time, you have to be creative. You don't have
to go full throttle.
No.
All the time, right? So now, especially if you're just getting into real estate investing, now's a good time to get that education.
Yeah.
right? And start underwriting as many deals as you can in whatever asset class that you're choosing, because they can all work. It takes more to get to profitability.
Yeah. And if you have $10,000, like that does not stretch. That costs that brings you education at this standpoint. Yeah. So I think that's just like, hey, it's not just manna from heaven. You take some work right now, and everyone is trying to hustle and make it work.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So when do you think the market is going to turn around?
I think right now is still a window for sellers to sell before I feel like they're going to have to give more, especially in our Maui market. I think they're going to have to give more and unfortunately come back to where the market dictates, because price sells real estate and the buyers tell the sellers what they're willing to pay. And there is a divide still in a lot of assets. And I think that there is still room for buyers, and sellers are going to have to give a little more. And that's tough when they bought it a couple years ago and they paid at the premium.
Sure. Nobody wants to give that up, right? No. And I think that it becomes tricky too, because Maui has become an egress market since the Lahaina fires, right? There's been more people leaving the island than have been moving here. And because of that, it really hurts our real estate sellers who did pay a lot of money, or who saw their property being worth $2.5 million, and now it's worth 1.8. Nobody wants to sell for 1.8 if 6 months ago they could have gotten 2.5.
I have sellers that they bought and they wanted to overpay because they wanted the property, and now they're realizing with the costs and the lack of rental is that they can't really afford that anymore, and they can't wait around for it to turn around. But taking it at a loss is a really tough pill to swallow. But at what point do you give up loss, or you wait and then you eat the bills for a while? So, I mean, that's a personal choice. But it's definitely not ideal for sellers.
Yep. I think the other thing that we really haven't talked about much is because, and it really hasn't been a thing for the last few years, is foreclosures and short sales,
which are coming back.
They are coming back.
Yeah. And they are coming on MLS, and we are already seeing that. And there is a backlog of them. And unfortunately, a lot of those basically loan forbearance programs, and everyone wants their money, and those are gonna and that's where opportunity is too. Yep. So for people that are saving and being cash heavy, you're probably going to be, and this is not just Maui market, you're probably going to be able to pick up a lot more properties through that.
Yeah. So let's transition a little bit into our portfolio. Okay. Are you all right with this?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to give people like a realistic look into what we have, what we've been struggling with, or what's working for us right now.
Yep.
Right. And so we can look back at the properties that we have. We saw after the Lahaina fires, I saw immediately like, okay, we're going to need a lot of help here from a federal standpoint. And I don't know what that looks like. And I see tourism coming down. When I heard, we had a lot of rhetoric that came out right after the fires where, look, Maui's not open for tourism right now. And I knew that was going to come back to really bite us. And I understood the intentions were good.
And us is our island. It's not just us personally.
Right.
Yeah.
So for that reason, when that started and that word came out, and we had traveled right after that. And I remember going to people and they're like, well, I thought your whole island burned down. And we're like, no, it's just a really small part of it. And we've got a whole lot of local businesses that are struggling. So please come visit. Yeah. And that part was really hard because the damage had been done and it wasn't corrected, so tourism has been slow since then. And we unloaded a number of our properties right then and moved into different markets and different asset classes. And the returns were not nearly as good as what we were getting here on Maui in its prime. However, looking at it now, like a year ago, we sold a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. We did a 1031 exchange on it. We got almost $1.4 million for that. Now, a year later, we have a condo directly across the hall from that condo. The HOA fees have almost doubled. The insurance has doubled.
Yeah.
The nightly rates have come down since till before 2016 numbers. And the occupancy rate is the lowest I've ever seen it. So that condo that we bought for $620,000, we have a $4,300 mortgage on it, roughly. We owe $550,000. I'm just giving you the numbers. So
$1,700 HOA.
HOA is roughly $1,700 a month. Insurance is another, however much that is. Electric is $300 a month. I think insurance is about $1,200 a year for the homeowner's insurance. And then the property taxes have doubled on that as well. So all of those things have brought this compression to a point where, at our peak, those condos, our holding costs may have been $5,000-$6,000 maybe.
And we also purchased this in 2019, which means people that purchased it 2023, 2024
paid way more money for it.
Paid way more, so their mortgages are higher.
So now our holding costs are roughly about $7,500. Before they were maybe $5,000, right? Now we are looking at a income of like $2,000 a month on these things. Maybe $2,500, $3,000 if we're lucky.
We've been negative.
We've been what I mean is that's our gross.
Yeah.
Right. So now instead of making $10,000, $12,000 a month gross and being able to cover all of our expenses, we are negative $4,000 a month on that one unit.
Yep.
At best case scenario. Right. So we have a partner on that one who wants out. And I hate the idea of selling
short. Yeah.
When we know a year ago, this property could have gave us 1.4 million. Now there's one that's sitting, in the same building at $1 million. And if you look at the Zillow page for that, it's got 5 saves and it's been on the market for over a year.
Excuse me.
So to me, you're good. So to me, that is not a good sign. Nobody is looking at short-term rental condos out here on Maui right now. And that, like you said before, that also gives an opportunity if people think that it will come back or if they are able to weather that storm. Okay.
Yeah.
But how long will that take?
Yeah. And the average buyer in these types of properties, they're not sitting on multi-millions dollars of cash that they just want to throw around. This is like the mom and pop. They're buying this retirement property to use for their kids and pay for the mortgage along the way for the next 15 to 20 years. And unfortunately, that's just becoming less of an option. And the people with the bigger pockets are going to have to take those over because
even like we'll look at our long-term rentals here on Maui, right? So we were getting a pretty good monthly income from long-term rentals out here too. And recently we've had to drop our rates on that. We've had way less interest of people coming in. And, so that's not doing as well.
No.
It's correcting because it was way higher.
It was way higher. Yeah. And that happened after the fires as well, where it just inflated rents to an astronomical amount. And then now it's correcting, but the gap is huge.
But we never raised our rent.
We didn't, but the island in general.
Correct.
A lot of homeowners
now that has come down dramatically. And I think a lot of that FEMA money is starting to go away too.
Yep. So we'll see what happens after that.
But on the mainland, so we have properties on the mainland as well. And those properties are, I'd say they're fair. The long-term rentals that we have in Arizona are still doing really well. The short-term rental in Arizona is doing well.
Yeah,
I'd say. I mean, not nearly as good as it here, but it's an incredible property, and I'm grateful to have it, and it's paying for itself.
And that, like at the end of the day, we bought a more expensive asset, and we sold an expensive asset, but that's more of a long-term play anyways. Mm-hmm. So if it can at least cover its costs and have a little bit of profit, that's okay, because we go in knowing that. And that's just where that divide isn't making sense for us here.
Yeah. I'd say, our development project has been very, very slow. And, there's all kinds of different factors for that. Certainly, when the presidency changed and tariffs and all that kind of stuff, those are all factors that got involved, right? And so we're sorting through that one. So nothing really big to put out there with that. I do want to talk about syndications though. Syndicators, holy smokes, they're getting crushed.
And they're investors, and we're some of them. But it's definitely it doesn't matter just what the deal is, and you need to underwrite your own deals and read the fine print, even as long as it is, or throw it into ChatGPT and have it digest it for you to look closer at it. But also, who you do business with matters. Yeah. And the people that have been around for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, maybe they weren't as experienced as we would have hoped. And it's not always just the nice person too. So
a lot of people grew really, really fast, and a lot of syndicators did too. And a lot of people started syndicating at a point where the market is great. Nothing can go wrong. And then overnight, interest rates go from 3% to 6%, and that crushes people's returns. Yeah. Right. And so we've seen that in a lot of sectors. So we invest in self-storage, we invest in multifamily, we invest in mobile home parks, we invest in notes, we invest in lending funds, right? So of all of those asset classes, the more traditional ones have pretty much all gotten hurt.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for these syndicators, because I feel like none of them none of the ones that we invest in for sure have any reason to, pull investors off course. They did not want to have capital calls. They did not want to stop distributions, right? I feel like the intent was always good.
Yeah.
I feel like what didn't get factored in a lot of times was the absorption rate, because when things were really good and everyone was buying, there was also a lot of builders building. Mm-hmm. And so when those new buildings come on the market, I'm talking multifamily now, right? When those new buildings come on market, the old buildings become less desirable. And so when you had the intent of, building this thing up and selling it for X amount of dollars, and now a new one comes in next door, well, your X amount of dollars is now dropped. Sure. Right. And so if those numbers drop enough, then your investors don't get their returns. Yeah. And you can't make your payments, and you can't sell that property.
Right. And also the loan terms that they had, a lot of them were 3 years, and the 3 years came up real quick, and the interest rates fluctuated, and it just unfortunately was too expensive, more expensive than was anticipated. So yes,
so we've held off on investing in syndications. We've basically put our pencils down, right? Because things don't make a ton of sense for us right now as an investment standpoint.
But still actively looking.
We're still actively looking. But we just haven't been able to pull the trigger on anything. And for syndications especially, I'm very cautious on those, with the exception of we've been putting money into notes funds. They have been solid, and lending funds. So basically the lending funds, essentially the bank, right? Now you don't get any tax benefits from that, but if you can pull in an 8, 9, 10, 12% return, being essentially a private money lender, and not having any of the headaches that come with being a bank, then I don't know, that's worked really well for us.
Yeah, at least in the interim.
With the one syndicator that we are invested in that's doing that money is pretty liquid. Mm-hmm. Like we can pull that money at any time. So if we see something happening in the market, or if we want to be able to invest in a certain property, we'll pull the money out of that syndication and put it into whatever property we like.
Yeah.
So,
on a close, like, there are still real estate deals to be found and had. We have friends that are still making money in real estate. Mm-hmm. We are still looking to buy real estate, but we are definitely scrutinizing the deal and the source of it a lot closer, because you don't have as much room for error.
Correct. Yep. So you got to be a better real estate investor.
Yeah. So learn from our mistakes, learn from the people that you're around, that you're learning from, that you're listening to. And if it looks like bright, sunny skies, maybe dig a little deeper before you commit.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't believe everything that you see on Instagram.
I feel like we're supposed to pray or something.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening to our personal opinions. There's no advice in here, but just our take on real estate, because we are in it all the time and we are still looking to continue to ride the real estate train, and just kind of our takes on that.
Yep. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for being part of the family today. If you want a closer look at our journey through real life, business, and all the wild adventures, follow us on Instagram at Our Family Invest. And for free resources to help you on your own path, head to ourfamilyinvest.com.
If you like this episode, send it to a friend. And if you're feeling extra generous, drop us a quick review. It really helps us grow this community. Thank you so much for being part of our family today. We really, truly appreciate you.